So you've heard me say these words a couple of times now, like powerful and amazing and bless up. Usually followed by something like active record. Are the lights kind of light? Are they bright here? Should we hit the lights?
Yeah.
All right. Hey, oh. Bless up to active record. And Gabby. Thank you, Gabby. We love you, Gabby. Oh my God, it worked. I say that because sometimes it's just me. So yeah, we're gonna talk about what active record is, right? Something about migrations, and then ultimately, what does active record do? Why am I constantly blessing up to active record, and why is it so powerful? So, who here has gotten to the active record labs that you were like, hey, I'm gonna go mad hard, I'm gonna skip lunch, and I'm gonna do them? Okay, don't skip lunch anymore. Try not to do that. Nobody. Good. Good job. And so we're going to talk a lot about code organization, and we're going to go through each file and we're going to set it all up, right? So the first thing is this rake file. I think Steven had talked a little bit about what rake is, right? Who wants to take a shot at their description of rake? Okay, there's too many hands to pick from, so I'm just going to not pick on anybody, and I'm just going to explain it again. The idea is that sometimes when you hear like coding, it's like, great, I'm going to write code to automate that so that I no longer have to do that anymore. And so rake is actually like a program based on the C programming language called make. So it's Ruby's make rake. And what it can do is it allows you to write Ruby that can read and write Ruby. Wow. And so we're going to get into sort of like examples of it, but that's basically like for your understanding what that is. Have you guys talked about the gem file yet? Okay. Does anyone know what it is?
Where all your gems go.
Noise! It is where the gems go.
I think that is
That is correct.
It lists the gems that you want for this application.
Yes, it lists all the gems that you want for your application. Why would we need something like this? Like this.
Not everything you want to do is built into another Ruby.
Yes, not everything you want to build, not everything you want to do is part of the original Ruby core programming language, right? So why would we want the gem file to specify all the gems we're about to use? My boss Brandon said I look like William Dafoe when I did that. So I'm trying to be excited, but he thinks I look like a psycho. Like, so what about that gem file, huh? Yeah? So think about it like this. Not to be drastic, but let's say you're coding along, right? And you're like, man, I have to finish this feature. But then a thunderstorm comes in, and you're like, you know what? Code in the rain, because that's a good idea. And then the water gets all over your laptop, which was like such an unexpected thing to happen. And then your laptop goes, right? Luckily for you, right before that happened, you saved your code, you committed it, and you pushed it to the cloud, right? And now it's in GitHub. And so you come in the next day, you're like, oh my God, I need a brand new laptop. So you ask us, and we lend you one out of the kindness of our hearts, plus deposit. And so you have this brand new laptop, right? And what you need to do is you need to reinstall Ruby. And you're working on your app again, but all of a sudden it's like, great, how do I know all of the different extra code that I need to pull into my particular project? So if I have a gem file specified, when I clone that repo down, all I have to do is go, great, reinstall all of these gems so that your environment is set up correctly, so that you will always have something called active record, and you'll have something called Sinatra active record, and you'll have rake, require all, SQLite, pry, and something called faker, so that your app will work as intended anytime you use any of the files or code inside any of these gems. Who feels comfortable about what a gem is? Okay, what is a gem?
It's like an additional library, I guess, of like stuff you can use.
Yeah.
It's a library. Does anyone know?
Yeah, what's a library?
Where you get books.
Yes. Very good. So basically what a gem is I can write some code, and then because I've written this code and it is beautiful, I'm like, great, I want to share it with the world. I'm going to package it into what is known as a gem, and I'm going to publish it completely for free on something called rubygems.org. That way anybody can essentially download this gem and have all of the code that I just wrote. So I've done this already. Please don't download this. It's called a gem called Wangtron. It doesn't really do anything. But yeah, the bottom line is like you can like write code, push it to the cloud. Somebody else can download it, right? And we're going to see that come into play, specifically the gem of Active Record. And so it's going to be really important. We'll touch more on this when Stephen gives you the inheritance lecture and how powerful that can be and how we can literally take other people's code that they've written, slap it all into ours, and then add on top of it. So development becomes very fast, and the baseline foundations for what you want to build are already there, that you don't have to sort of literally reinvent the wheel, so to speak. Cool. Awesome. All right, so let's do this. When I do the gem file, right, and now that I've had all of this, if I need to reinstall all of them ever again, in the event that I'm not using my own computer or anything like that, or I'm asking somebody else, like, hey, you're very smart. Do you want to add a feature to my application? They have to clone the repo down. They will then take all these gems in this like bundle, and then they will install them. So there's this command called bundle install, which comes from another gem called bundler. So you'll have to install the gem bundler. So you have access to bundle install, so you can install all of these gems, and it will control the versions for all of these gems for you. And so version control becomes really important because let's say I'm on and I'm building this app today, Thursday, August 15, 2019, right? And then someone is listening to this lecture 5-6 years from now, and then they basically install all of this. Now the problem is development moves very fast. And so I could be on a version for SQLite, like version 5, and then when they install this and they're trying to run through this sort of lecture or tutorial 5 or 6 years later, SQLite might be on version 11 or 12. And so when they install, their feature, their versions, right, their keywords might be different from mine. But with Bundler, I can specify what version. So when you install it from my repo, I can say, hey, just kidding, I have to be on version 1.3. And so this locks certain versions in so that no matter what you're doing, this theoretically should always work because me and you are always using the same version. Cool? And so the gem file is very important, and you can like install everything. We'll be using a lot more bundle together, just basically moving forward. So I think it's important to kind of cover this. All right. So what we want to do today is talk a little bit about, oh, look at my notes. Oof. Wow. Do you see the difference? None. Except that little sneaky line. So we talk a little bit about rake, right? Talk about this file structure here. We have this DB folder in here. We have something called migrations. We have this development file, which is very human readable, obviously. And then we have something config. So let's go into config. We have this bundler.require, and that's just going to pull in all of my gems that I've installed. So if I run bundle install, using this bundle.require, I now have access to all of the code that other people have written to include like Active Record, Faker, and Pry. So Pry was a gem, right? It is not necessarily organic to the Ruby library and rather the Ruby language. And so I had to require Pry. That way I can use binding.pry. Does that make sense? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something like Active Record base. This will make more sense inside the inheritance lecture, what this really means. But really what I'm trying to do is establish a connection to the database, this SQLite 3 database, specifically pointing to, in my DB folder, a development.sqlite file. So here, I'm going to explain what this is, and we'll see it. And then I have something called require all app. What require all app is doing is, did I write this method anywhere? This method, look, ready? Check it out. Boop. Oop, it's embarrassing. Doop, 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 doop. Where is require all sort of written? Where is def require all? Huh? I'm in the environment file right now, but where is, it's in the gems, right? It's in mine, All right, so it's in the gems. Somebody else wrote this code, but because I'm requiring sort of everything, I can basically use it without me having to define it. And that's kind of like the power that we have access to. And recall all app is saying everything inside app, all the models, like let's say I have, this is a very interesting app I've built over time, and that is something about a bar, a drink, there's feral cats. You can't read that, right? Sorry. There's a bar, drink, feral cat, food, nice persons, and then just regular persons. Sketch. So the idea is that everything inside app, I'm going to just kind of combine together so that I have access to them inside this file. So think of this as sort of like my combo file where I'm require relative all the files, but I'm using this sort of app folder so that it's scalable. That way, anytime I make a brand new file here, I don't have to hard code and add it. All I have to do is add it inside my app folder, and because I'm pulling everything from app, it will also automatically be included. So let's kind of like think through this thing. Let's go to my rake file, and we'll see that we have something called the rake console. There's a task called console, pry.start. I'm going to require relative my config environment, which we know, if we go right back into it, does this require all app? The config environment requires everything. And so in my rake file, if I'm requiring everything in app, do I have access to all the models here in this file? One more time. Ready? Config environment is going to pull in everything. And then in my rake file, I'm going to pull in config environment. So do I have access to everything? Yeah. And so when I run this task, rake console, I'm going to see pry.start. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to kind of comment this out real quick. And if I want to see all my rake tasks, I can simply go rake --tasks. And I see these two. These are my only rake tasks, console and dog, because I built them. Now if I pull in from Sinatra Active Record rake, let's take a look at all my rake tasks. Whoa. Jinkies. Wowzers. I just saw an old episode of Scooby-Doo. Thank you. What a great TV show. It's still running. So, where did all these come from? But which gem specifically did these come from? Right, the Sinatra Active Record rake. And so if I take a look, I've already seen inside my gem file, I'm pulling this Sinatra Active Record. And so let's go back to our rake file. If I check out my console, I can simply do rake console, and that will do that pry.start. That's why I'm in that pry session. So I'm going to exit out of here. And I'm going to go over a couple of these, right, as we sort of need them. So the first thing is we heard a review about SQL. So we know how to grab data from a database using the SQL querying language, right? What's it stand for again? The structured querying language, right? From there, I can do something like select star from. I can do update wherever I want from whatever table. I can do the full CRUD functionality using SQL. But now what I really want to do is I want to take that SQL and I want to use Ruby, which is what we built earlier with Steven. And that is that ORM, that Object Relational Mapper. How can I map the SQL query, the select star from, pulling in everything, to a Ruby method like all? If I'm pulling everything, select star, the star meaning everything, how can I get it to give me back all the Ruby instances? And now I'm going to create a method self.all, and it's going to run the SQL query, create all those Ruby instances, and now when I run self.all, it's pulling from the database. And so, who enjoyed writing all those here docs? The here docs meaning the SQL query. You like that? Did you want to do that every time? Who remembers in the code challenge where you're like, oh, I have to do this self.all 3 times. And now you're like, oh, I'm just going to copy and paste the add all, push in the self, right? The def self.all, at all, end. And so you're kind of seeing how you're writing the same code over and over for the same functionality. And so what we can do is we can use the power of maybe someone else's code who wrote it to import it, pull it into R so that we no longer have to write it, and we can start using that immediately to build something cool. And so the first thing I want to do is kind of go through what these are, right? What rake db create is, db just stands for database. Create for the db would probably do what? Just create the database, right? Now what I want to do is create something called a migration. So what is a migration? Has anyone gotten to that yet? Okay. You went to lunch, smart.
You know when you add the table to the database?
Yeah, so what I want to do is I want to use Ruby now to actually create the database. I don't want to go into SQL and run this create table. I want to write Ruby commands that can write Ruby and SQL for me. That's that meta programming. So if I use this rake db create migrations command, I have to pass it in some parameters like name, version, like, okay, cool. If I don't really know how to do this, this is so helpful. Bless up to Active Record. If I just simply return, it tells me you didn't specify a name. Here's some example usage. What a friendly error message. So let's actually kind of build something, right? In terms of like the has many, the belongs to, and the many to many, those are the relationships we've talked about earlier. Let's start out small and build a has many belongs to relationship. So just two models. What would you like to build? Maybe some scary clowns, or something boring like squirrels, nests, and trees. Okay, didn't like that. All right, good to know.
Apples and trees.
Okay. All right, apples and trees. Okay. Yeah, I mean, who needs squirrels, right? Silly. Let's do it. Cool. What's the relation to apple and tree to apple?
Apple belongs to a tree. Tree doesn't count.
What a great relationship. Would have never came up with that on my own. Cool. Apples and trees? A different idea. I tricked you because now you have to pick one. So. Are you guys going to do it? Okay, there's something interesting about this class. Tell Brandon. Okay, good. Man, I was going to come up with a better name, but we can do serial killer and cereals.
Bones and skeleton.
Okay, I'm going to pull that back a little bit. So what was your childhood like? No. We're going to do, we're going to take one more non-violent suggestion, and then we will build out squirrels, nests, and trees if we can't agree on a non-violent.
Team and players.
Huh?
Team and players.
Team and players? Okay.
Goer and fist bumps.
Club goer and fist pumps? That's a new one. You sure you guys don't want to go with sick person and diarrheas? I'm telling you, that's still on the table. All right, cool. All right, we'll take it to the vote. Ready? So we have team and players. 2, okay. 3, all right. We have club goer and fist pumps. Okay, we have 6 over here. All right, and then we have squirrels, nests, and trees, which counts as 2 votes. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Looks like there's, I mean, that's like a clear winner there. So, yeah, let's do that. I don't know. It's for me, please. This is my last time lecturing. Oh my God, I didn't tell you guys. Okay, hey, so I will tell you a story later. But let's do this for me. So we need a couple of models, right? We need squirrels, we need nests, and we need trees. As a very fast, super powerful reminder, let's kind of draw out those relationships, right? We have, boom, S for super squirrel. And then here we have something, and then here we have something. Which ones what? Squirrels nest in trees. So nest in trees. What are we doing?
Nest on the bottom.
Nest on the bottom?
Yeah.
Okay. And then trees over here, right? So what's the relationship between squirrel and tree? All right, so squirrels, right, you can be in many trees. And then the trees can basically know a lot of these squirrels, but they only know them, yes, I'm doing squirrels nest in trees, because they voted for it. Can you believe that? Oh my God. So squirrels, right, and nests, what's sort of this relationship? Squirrel to nest. Every summer, they kind of make a new one, so naturally, right, each one of them that they make sort of belongs to the squirrel. And then the same with this tree and this nest. What's the relationship between tree and nest? If I have a tree of like 1,000 branches, right, so a tree can have many nests, right? But this one particular nest belongs to like one tree, right? I've never seen a squirrel pack their nest up and sort of carry it to like another tree. That would be crazy. Planet Earth 3, I'm hoping. So that's kind of this relationship. But like I talked about, let's first establish this one-to-many. So let's go with squirrels and nests, right? And that is like a one-to-many because squirrels can have many nests, and the nest belongs to the squirrel. So I'm going to start with those two models. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create this migration, and I'm going to use literally their example. Rake DB create migration, name equals to, and then create. So name equals to create underscore squirrel. I'm just gonna move this over. Boop. Squirrel or squirrels? Based on the example.
Plural.
Right, the plural. So boop, boop, boop. And so what this Rake DB create migration is gonna do is it's going to do something. DB migrate 2019-01519-320. Okay. Let's take a look at that file. In my DB file, in my migrate, I have something called create squirrel. Ooh, look at all of that code that's pre-written in this file that was literally generated for me. And so that is the power of Rake. What I can do is I can essentially give it a command, and then it can read and write and execute Ruby for me. So by writing this command, what it did was it created this file, and in that file, it pre-wrote some code, which is cool. And so, like I was trying to tell you, we want Ruby to be able to create these tables in our database, and then we want Ruby to be able to go into those databases and then give us some more Ruby. So it's all Ruby all the time. So if I want to create a table, right, and I'm a developer that's sort of like creating the syntax, I'm making it up on the spot, what do you think the method to create a table would be called? What would you want to call it? Okay. Wow, bless up. Migrations are powerful, right? And so what is this table name? All right, this should be plural because the table names are pluralized. There's multiple squirrels in this table. And what I want this create table function to do, oh my God, all right, is take a table block. Oh my God. This code is so sexy. So in the table, right, specifically, I want to give attributes to this squirrel. So what are the attributes to this squirrel? Name? Sure. Cool. I'm going to just do this real quick. Boop. And what is the data type for this? Should name be a number, an array? Okay. So I'm lazy. I'm going to take this table, and I'm just going to do this. Bloop. Ooh, spicy. I'm just going to shorten it to T. All right. So inside the table, what I'm going to do is for each row in the table, it's going to be a string. All right. So inside your regular way to create the table, when you create the table, you created the new row and you use something like text field, something like that. So here it's going to be a string because that's what the text field sort of equates to in the Ruby land. And the name of the row, the column rather, is going to be the name. So what other attributes do we want for this squirrel? Age. Okay. Is that a string? Sorry, I got ahead of myself. Okay. So remember, how do we do integer? Okay. How do we do like numbers or integers in the table? Something like that. Well, that action? No? I don't know. How do we do it in the tables? we literally typed out the word integer, right? An integer doesn't exactly translate to Ruby, so what should it be? Okay, I was just kidding. It does translate directly to Ruby, right? And there's age. So right now we just have two attributes. One's a string, one's an integer, and it's going to be for the name and for the age. And so let's actually do this. What I can do is I'm going to go back to my terminal. So now we're kind of working side by side with the terminal and with the Ruby code. And one of the things I want to do is I want to shrink this back down. Can you still see this in the back or no? Okay, all right, just kidding, just kidding. Is that mo better?
Yeah.
So if I do rake t, can you see the rake tasks?
Yeah.
You see the rake tasks? All right, cool. So we created the migration, right? But creating migration is kind of like just sort of when you create a method. You can do def method name and then end, but does that mean the method is called? No, right? So if I create the migration, I haven't actually run it whatsoever. So what I need to do is actually run the migration, and what that's going to do is it's going to do a lot of magic for you. If I have a migration for a table squirrels, what do you think it's looking for in terms of like Ruby code to be able to attach maybe like the name and the age to something like define initialize with name and age? What sort of file might that be? Okay, let me help you out here. What kind of file do you think would hold the define initialize, the class for squirrel? Yeah, like a Ruby file, right? So let's just take a look at person. Ooh, okay. I just see this class nice person, so we're going to do this. I'm going to create a model. All right, we've done this before, and this is just going to be squirrel.rb. So in squirrel.rb, I'm just going to make a brand new squirrel model that I want to kind of connect to the squirrels table, which should make sense to me, right? I have a model, a Ruby model, that maps to a squirrels table. So I'm just going to do class, and then I'm going to add this, boo, boo, boo. Class. Just kidding. All right, end squirrel. Cool. And so here, what's the first thing we should do? What do we normally do? We initialize, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to skip that, and I'm going to teach you about something a little bit that we haven't really touched yet, but we will be diving into more of it in the inheritance lecture. And that is squirrel is going to pull from something called active record. I think it's like base. This syntax will make more sense once we get the inheritance lecture next week. But the idea is that with this sort of less than sign, everything that's been defined in this active record base class, the squirrel now has access to. Cool? So that's all that means. That's all you really need to know about it for right now. In the same way that, again, this is like the more inheritance lecture, you have like human that probably inherits from like the animal class, that probably inherits from like the living class, and then you can kind of keep going on and on, right? And so that's like the chain. In the same way that I showed you a little bit like for IRB, we have array, and array.ancestors will give you what it inherits from, like the enumerable class, the objects, the kernel, and the basic object. So now I have this class. Oops. Okay. So now I have this class squirrel, and I have a squirrel table migration that I have not sort of run yet. I simply created the file. Now I want to run this file, and I want to actually migrate the database. So I'm just going to run, whoops. So I'm just going to run right here, rake db migrate. And what this is going to do is it's going to create a table for me in 0.0007 seconds. Blazing fast. And then it does this migration super fast. So I now have, right, a squirrel class that I built, and it pulls from this like active record base. And now I have a squirrels table that exists. That's basically what it's saying. So if I were to kind of talk about what this is, right? This is a visual representation of my domain model. It's a visual representation of my domain model. If I wanted that same visual representation of my domain model, but in code, there's a file for that called the schema. So let's take a look. Bloop. This schema file gives me, okay, I made this earlier. It makes this squirrels table. Cool. That's all it did. It basically create this squirrels table for me by using Ruby, and it's magic. That's all it's doing. Are there any questions as to like what this is supposed to be? What is this supposed to be? You all tired?
Did Active Record create that for you automatically, or did you type that out?
Active Record did this for me. Magic.
It's the file structure.
Yeah. Bloop.
So, like the migrate, it created the migrate that folder and then put that file in there. Like it's that whole. You didn't like create this thing.
Nothing. It basically creates this file for me when I run the create migration. It creates a migration, aptly named. And then when I run the migration by running rake db migrate, it built this schema file for me. Yeah? So this is what it's doing. Let's take a look. All right, don't worry about this.
And that was one Dranks was one you did previously. You just like appended it to the file.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. Yeah, I did drinks earlier because I wanted to prep for this lecture. I wanted to make sure I was giving you my best. So take a look at this version. All right, it says 2019, August 15, and then some weird numbers. Let's take a look at the migration that the squirrels is. So remember, 19.8.1.5, 192.320, 192.320, 192.320, 192.320. So you can see that there's this like sort of direct match between the migration number along with the version number after I migrated. And so we're going to keep that in mind. What this version does is you'll see in your labs, it'll actually ask you to start by creating migrations on your own manually by doing something like, oh, why don't you just make a migration? And you'll create the file like this. You'll go whoop, 001, something like create squirrels.rb, something like that. Here, Active Record sort of does this for you out of the box, and it gives you what is kind of known as like a timestamp. Well, why would this timestamp be important? And people shouldn't start necessarily with like 001 all the time.
Keep it unique.
It does help it keep unique, yeah.
They have to migrate again in the future.
Yeah, you might have to migrate to the future in the same sort of like terrible thunderstorm scenario that I talked to you about. Some of you are like really intense, and that's okay.
You may have to revert a migration.
You might have to revert a migration, yes, and we're going to get to that.
Wouldn't it just keep this version of the table like unique from the other ones in the sense that if you wanted to use it, like to make another, like some sort of join on it and create something after the fact, you could make a new version of this one and then still have the other one?
Yeah, this is having to do very specific with version control, but the timestamp is important specifically because think about it this way, right? The migration is going to migrate in a specific order. And so if I am working on an app and I'm like, hey, you want to help me out with this? And I give you permission to it. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to create a table called nests, and you can create a table called trees, right? What are you going to name that table? If you see 001 up there, 002, you're going to name it 002. And guess what I'm going to do, because I only see squirrels up there? I'm also going to name it 002. So if we're both 002, which order should it migrate in? Who knows, really, because there's so many other factors. But if the numbers are 1, 2, and 3, it knows what order to migrate in. And that's important because when we think back to this sort of structure, should I create and migrate the nest class before the tree class even exists? No, that wouldn't make any sense. So the order will matter, and we'll see that as we start to add migrations, how that version and that number will take precedent. Yeah.
So should we be using rake to create every file without doing it manually for code, just to make sure we don't run into these problems?
Yes, so we're going to use rake to create all these files because it automatically adds this timestamp, and that's important. So let's take a look. Let's kind of continue, and let's actually show some magic here. So I have this Squirrels migration table that I just migrated. We take a look at the schema. I'll take a look at this models for Squirrel. So notice I don't even have it initialize. Interesting. Okay. And I just created this migration. My table's all set up. Let's go into the rake console. Can I make a brand new Squirrel without initialize? Let's find out. All right, what are the attributes of Squirrel? We have name, and does anyone have a cool name? What? Alvin. Okay. Capital A for Alvin. Oh. Okay. And what about the age? How old is Alvin? Who knows? That's weird. 60. Okay. Looks great though, right?
Yeah.
Let's find out. Bloop. Ooh. Okay. Why is this sort of like ID nil? Why would ID be nil? Right. The ID comes from the primary key in the database, but I just did .new. What do I need to do to save into the database? I need to run the .save command that we kind of talked about and that you all built out with Steven. So if I do, do I have access to this? Do I have a reference to this? Did I save this to a variable? No, I didn't, right? So I have to run this command again. Ugh, embarrassing. Or, right, I can use the underscore. Underscore gives me the last return value. So if I did something like squirrel1 is equal to the underscore, this is going to be the last return value, which was the squirrel. So if I hit this and I take a look at S1, ooh, spicy. So if I hit S1.save, I now see, ooh, true, okay. I see S1, I see the squirrel now has an ID, and it's in there. Wait, hold on. See this .save here? Instance or class method? Instance method, right? Did we build that method? Oh my, active record, bless up. Let's just make another squirrel real quick. Okay? Does anyone want to be one? Yeah, door. Okay, how old is Theodore? 90. Oh my God, wow. I thought Alvin was the oldest, but not in the world I come from, I guess. Oh, snap. We need to S2 underscore. So S2.save. So now how many squirrels do we have in the database? Right? Oh, man, wouldn't it be nice? I guess I have to do def self dot all, or do I? Oh my lord! Wow! Bless up to active record. It's basically writing the here doc for you, and then it's creating the new Ruby instances, and then returning it in this array. So you don't have to do any of that. But man, what other methods were there? You can probably find by a name. If I gave it Alvin, would that? Oh my lord! Wow! Wow. You want to update that bad boy?
Yeah.
All right.
Make them open.
Okay, sure. Sure. What do we want to update? The age? Okay. And what do we want to make them? Older? My God, that's a monster. Whoa. They're both 100. Why would both be older? Because what is the scope of that method? But what if we did, oh, I don't know, we just wanted this one to kind of turn back the hands of time over here. Ooh, let's take a look at, oh my God, the class and the instance method built for you. Wow. So I bet what you're thinking is, how cool is that? And also, Evans, you wasted the last week of my life. You're a jerk. So yes, I did. I'm sorry. I'm here to tell you that to your face. But the idea is that you should understand what's happening under the hood here. And that is, you know what the method really looks like. Do I have a getter and setter there? Built for me. No getters, no setters, no alls, no SQL here docs, and all I have to do is create this migration, run it, and then build my model to pull from active record. Wow. It's like WOW, lols.
What if you don't want, what if you want to do a custom, you don't want to set it?
And you don't want a setter? Well then, you can override it. And just be like, yo, guess what, def age equals to? It's gonna take in nothing, right? Something, I guess. And then normally you do some sort of like, oh, well, let me set the age, right? You're just gonna go, no! No soup for you. And you can override it. Very good question. I've literally never gotten that. But yeah, because it's gonna run this one. Because the way inheritance works, man, I really wish you got the inheritance like, the way it works is like, it'll do this if nothing exists in the class first. So this takes precedent. So yeah, active record. Bless up. It's been about 40 minutes. I could think you all need like 5 to 10 minutes to revel in its magic and glory and how easy it is to set up. And then we'll come back and we'll sort of do like this very quick association and bless up even more to active record. But you really got to come back quick because I have a meeting at 4 o'clock. So I will see you all in 2 to 5 minutes. Okay, great. All right, cool. So in case you weren't like blown away by its magic, not possible. I think the idea is that there seems to be a lot of like new information to intake in terms of like, how do I actually set that up? How do I do it? You will be doing it so much and so often. It will come very naturally. But again, we'll just need another example. So we built out the squirrel and we talked about the idea that this has this sort of relationship of has many to these nests, and then it belongs to the squirrel. So let's build that out together, all right? I remember the only way I learned how to spell together was like 3 words. Did you do this in elementary school? To get her? Ooh, wow. I'm just stalling. No big deal. Okay, cool, we're back. So what do we need to do to basically wire this up? What 2 things were kind of important for this to kind of work? We needed something that Ruby understood, right? And we need something SQL understood. SQL needs that table, and then Ruby needs that class, that model. So we just have to build both, right? We could start with the class and the model, or we could start with the sort of SQL table creation thing, which is the, sometimes I know you guys rely on me for the answer, I actually fell over because nobody helped me out. Sorry. It's the migration, right? We have to create the migration for this table. So I'm simply gonna go, oh my goodness, what's that syntax? Bloop, bloop. And then it tells you example usage. Bless up. Let's go. Ready? Name equals to, and I'm gonna create the what table now? Should do the trees? This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make the nests like a mouse. Wow. Done. You're right. That was sort of the idea behind just pointing out the idea that migration order is important. But here it's gonna be fine because I'm gonna hack around. So I'm just going to build the squirrels and nests, right? And so naturally, I have this migration. I need to go in and actually create this table. So I'm going to jump in and go bloop. Look at these nests. And so I need to table. If you forget the syntax, it's very easy to find, and that is rake migration. It's like the first thing that come up. Cool. So create table, and that's going to be the nests table. What that's going to do is take the table block, and for each of them, I'm going to have to put in the attributes. So if we remember sort of this relationship here, what does the nest need to know about? The squirrel and the tree, right? I haven't really touched the tree yet, so let's not worry about that. Let's just worry about squirrel. Based on what we know about SQL, right, and sort of those joins, how do we sort of like look at the other table? What was the very special key that we needed, and it wasn't the primary key, but the one that comes from across the land, the foreign key. Cool. So I just t.foreign key. What is the data type in here? Is it a string? It's an integer, right? So boop, 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 boop. And this is going to be that foreign key. So what does that look like for squirrel? Underscore ID. Cool. Because I don't want to put the dot in here because Ruby might confuse it for thinking it's calling a method. That's a little tricky. So I'm just going to put squirrel underscore ID as sort of this foreign key. Does this table need anything else? Probably needs trees, but because we don't have tree yet, I'm not going to add it. I'm going to hold it back. Other attributes for nest might be like material that it's made of, but that can get real dicey, right? Like New York City has a lot of materials we probably don't want to talk about, like me. So smooth transition into creating the migration, but now we actually have to run it. So if you forget, which one of these will run the migration? Yeah, right? Rake db migrate. That's the one that's going to run the migration. One you need to create. You're going to set it up, build it. Because how will the computer know what attributes are in your table? You should have to type those in. Then after you type them in, and you're all set, you want to run that migration. So rake db migrate. Boop. And look, oh my goodness, powerful. So let's take a look at what file to see the visual representation of my database. The schema file, right? I'm zooming in not to be obnoxious, but because like people just can't read. Like, you can read. I just meant it's hard to see. So if I take a look, take a look at my schema, I see that squirrels has a name and an age. What the? What the? There should be another one in there. Let's take a look at that schema again. Oh, thank goodness. Embarrassing. So there it is. There's nests with the squirrel ID, and then there's squirrels with name and age. Cool. All right, so now that that's done, let's actually take a look. We need to, because we built the SQL portion and we created the table, now we need to build the Ruby portion because we need to map the Ruby to the SQL, right? So let's take a look. Do we have that tree sort of model? No, sorry, I know you have to look through all of those that you can't really see. The answer is no. So we need to make it. Boop. Tree.rb. Is it tree or trees for the model? All right, so class tree. End. And I'm just going to let you know what time it is. That is, I'm going to end the tree class. But I need the power of active record. So I'm just going to go active record, and I'm going to pull in the base. I like my beats fast. My bass down low. So now the tree has the power of active record. Let's test. Rake console. If I go in, let's take a look at that tree.all. What should I get? All the trees. And how many have I made? That's right, bagels. Whoop. Okay. What is that? active record relation. This object basically has like sort of like no attributes or anything. Basically, because I have no trees in here, it's just going to return sort of like nothing, so to speak. So let's make a tree. I can do tree.new, and then I can save it. Or I can have this combo method that does new and save all at once.
Are we supposed to be on tree or nests?
Oh my goodness, wow. I feel so dumb. It should be nests. Wow. Boom. Like that? It's like nothing ever happened. Just kidding, let's rename the file. It's like nothing ever happened. Wow. I am losing it. All right. Let's get back in there. Let's take a look at nest. Embarrassing. There it is. This is technically a relation, but it's fine. There's no nests, so naturally it's empty. Let's make one. So I can do new and save, or I can combine the two into this create action. So I can do nest.create, and I need to pass it what? Right, a squirrel ID. So right now I only have 2 squirrels, so we can pick between 1 and 2. Let's put 1 for funsies. Okay? Okay. So because it was that create, it did that new and the save. And because it was saved in the database, it does in fact have an ID. Cool. Let's just say squirrel 1 is very busy. And it makes a lot of these nests. Let's take a look at nest.all, and I see a lot of nests. All right, let's also make 1 nest for squirrel 2. That person is just built like a duplex, and rent is really high elsewhere, didn't really want to move, just 1, and that's okay. New York City, right? It's out of control. So let's take a look. Some of the deliverables that we built established those relationships between the 2 models. And what we did was inside, let's say, I don't know, the squirrel class, if I'm taking a look at this now, you're starting to see that there becomes a lot of files that happen. If you want to go to a very specific file very quickly, you can always just search for the file directly if you know what the file is called. And if you hit Command-T, and the same with Visual Studio Code, it brings up what is known as the fuzzy search. And the fuzzy search is great because you don't have to spell everything out all the way. This is what I mean. Inside app models, I have something called squirrel. The file name is called squirrel. So if I simply go Command-T and I do squirrel, okay. What the? Oh, nest? What the? It's a terrible, it's embarrassing. It didn't search my document yet. Dang it. Wow, this is the first time it's ever failed on me. It's supposed to search through like the whole thing and you can find it. That was a fail. I will let you know why later. I don't know why that's not working. Do you know why, Steven? The fuzzy search? Yeah, this has never happened before. I could. I would probably close it, reopen it at this point, and then it'll just work out of nowhere. Developer life. Hashtag turn it on, turn it off again. So, if I'm inside my squirrel class and I want to establish these relationships between this nest, what did we do before? Right? I wanted something like def squirrel, right? And what does this look like in terms of calling it? If I want to look at the squirrel's nests, this instance or class method?
Instance.
Right, because it's talking about each specific squirrel, right? So it'd be something like, you know, like s1 squirrel1 dot something like nests or something like that, right? Like checking out their nests. So let's just do this. Something like nests or bests. We'll just do that. So I'm lazy, right? We're just doing the squirrel's bests. So something like going through all of the nests, right? Nest.all, and then we're just picking out the ones that match that squirrel. So something like select, and then we are going to, I make that mistake a lot. And we're going to go through all these nests, and for each nest, right, is it there, what is the attribute of nest that we're looking at specifically? Right, the squirrel dot ID or underscore ID? Underscore ID, right? So which one is it really matching though? Self.id specifically. You want that number to number comparison. So notice how I put bests, and I'm going to comment that out. I wonder what the relationship between squirrel and nest is. And that the squirrel has many nests. I can take squirrel dot all, specifically the first one. Ooh, that's the instance. And I can see what are your nests. Bless up to Active Record. Active Record so powerful. But let's take a look at the opposite sort of relationship. And that is if I go through my nest.all.first, I get the first nest back. And let's see which squirrel it is. Sad face. Super sad face. Why? Because relationships are two ways, right? And I'm always trying to like focus on that. So let's take a look at the squirrel, and let's take a look at that nest. Okay. Where did it go? It's not even, oh, here it is. Embarrassing. And that is the squirrel, I'm sorry, the nest belongs to a, I feel like someone that's watching this lecture is like, are you also eating at the same time? So let's check out the nest.all.first and check out the squirrel. Oh my God. Wow. So Active Record, by simply creating what are known as these macros, the syntactical sugar, if I go inside that squirrel again, has many nests, really kind of just builds this and many more relationship methods for you under the hood in the exact same way that the adder reader built the getter, right? The has many nests will build the relationship methods for you. So I'm going to just correct that for the sake of the lecture. But one common gotcha, and then I will let you do the Active Record Powerful Labs, is the has many indicates how many, singular or plural? Plural, right? So I should probably be doing nests, right? But what about the nest? That belongs to a squirrels? That's not even good English. That don't make no sense. So the belongs to should be singular, and then the has many should be the pluralized version of that model name. Are there any questions as to the power of Active Record and what the belongs to or the has many will be doing for you? Who's excited about Active Record? Oh, bless up. Great. Thank you. That's all I got for you today.